Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Glad to have you here. It's Wednesday, halfway through the week. Hope that you are doing well today. Make sure that you tune in. When you tune into the show, that you're clicking that like button as you join the stream this morning. Help us spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. It's nice to have all of our audience members here. If it's your first time watching the show and you like the content that you see today, don't forget to subscribe to the channel that you're watching us on. We're basically broadcasting on dozens of apps: Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku, Rumble, Twitch, YouTube. And you may say, oh, well, this is a great strategy. Just, spread it as far and wide as you can. But in reality, I do this because I'm pretty sure that one day one of these networks is going to say, nah, we don't like your opinions, and they're going to kick us off. So help us to make sure that we fight internet censorship by subscribing whichever channel you're on. And remember that you can always watch the show at wakeupAmericaShow.com as well. All right, today's a very special day. A guest we haven't seen from or heard from in a while. Joining us now live in studio, the great Hal Dooley is here with us. Hi, Hal. How you doing, buddy?
Good morning, Austin. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. I said that when you came in here that you actually look really nice and healthy, but you just been under the weather for a little while, but I guess you're feeling better.
But it wasn't COVID, so we're lucky there. It's just, it was a cold pneumonia. They thought maybe it might be allergies. As you get older, you pick up some allergies and stuff. But it was about a month of hacking and coughing, and now I've got some abdominal problems. They say my gallbladder has got a stone or two in it, and they're thinking about taking it out. I'm interested in that because one side, I go to a private doctor, and I've also got Veterans Administration insurance and coverage. So one says, well, let's wait and see. And the other says, well, let's just go ahead and take it out. It's cleaner, neater. It'll create, an easy baseline in the future that if something happens to the stones, that they get into your bile ducts or stuff, it'll really create a lot of problems and stuff. So we're sort of going through that trilogy of medicine care on what to do and what not to do. But anyway, I'm outside of that reasonably healthy. You're back again. You went to Japan. You speak in Japanese now?
Hi, arigatou gozaimasu.
Is that what it is?
Hi, onegaishimasu. Mushi mushi.
And you bought back a lethal weapon.
And we did I tried to, actually. I tried to buy a Japanese katana while I was over there.
Well, you brought Stephanie back. I mean, that's a lethal weapon.
She is now that she knows karate, actually. You should see her in class when she's fighting with the other girls' class. She's actually pretty awesome now.
Do we have a 6-foot distance? We'll just within 6 foot. Away from that leg kick. That's what I worry about.
She's got a really nasty, we call it a Mawashi Geti now, and a Mai Geti, which are a front kick and a round kick. But we'll catch you up on that in just a minute.
Okay.
Hal, Caleb Vanderfelt says, got the local talent in today. Yes, Hal's joining us here, and everybody's excited to see Hal. John Rail says, Hal. Everybody's excited to see him. Make sure you click that like button in support of Hal Dooley, who's joining us right now. He's the former head of the Missouri Veterans Commission.
Yes.
He is a U.S. Marine, and a U.S. Marine. He's also a certified scuba diver, which means he might have a little bit of insight to offer with us today on this next topic. The latest news, and we'll talk about the good news right away off the top of the show here, which is that searchers have detected banging every 30 minutes near the area where the Titanic submarine vanished. Apparently they have these sonar buoys, Hal, that they have set up in the area of the Titanic wreck in order to detect. So the airplanes go and they get signals from these buoys in order to try and triangulate where this missing submarine may be. Now, for those of you who haven't been paying attention to the news in the last 48 hours, let me just catch you up very briefly. A submersible tour of people who wanted to go visit the Titanic wreck was lost 2 days ago, and they say that they have about 96 hours worth of air in that submersible, which, if it departed on Sunday, means that they would now have about 20 hours of oxygen left if nothing went wrong other than their guidance systems and their communication systems. Some people believe that it is possible that they may have become entangled in the Titanic wreck itself. This has actually happened before, Hal. There was a reporter who went down in a submersible like this, visited the Titanic wreck, and got caught up on the propeller. Some people believe that it was possible that maybe they just got caught in a fishing net that could have been floating around at that time. So there's a lot of things that could have gone wrong. But I don't know if you've seen any of the reports of this, Hal, but some of the technology that is being used for this sub it's not exactly high tech. Have you been following any of the reports about this?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I'm really concerned, overly concerned. No, I've been on a submarine, been on the USS Missouri, and been on the USS Jefferson City. Of course, a lot bigger, a lot different technology and stuff. A submersible, 5 people, including the owner of the company that has developed the submersibles on there. 2 things. One is they can't get in to the submersible.
Right.
They've got to position a mothership wherever it is right now, and I assume it's in the vicinity of the Titanic, position over it, and then it has to bring it up, and then they have to open it from the inside. And I don't know, I haven't heard any news accounts with regard to them, their ability to get into it from the outside. But that's when, we talk about that. It's not necessarily high-tech
Mm-hmm.
with regard to that. And I don't think they really designed it for this type of situation.
Well, there's a lot of reports that are coming out about the technology that was used to create this submarine. And, I have to be careful about some of the reporting on this because, just because somebody says, well, this wasn't rated for this depth, et cetera, it doesn't mean that there aren't some other variables at play that might protect the submarine, underneath whatever circumstances that they're going for. But we're talking about deep. We're talking about 2 miles below the ocean. And when you think about 2 miles, you may think, oh, well, that's just like what, 5 minutes while driving in a car? Well, when you're talking about 2 miles below the ocean, you're talking about a much more serious situation where if anything, absolutely anything goes wrong, we're talking about a catastrophic mistake here.
Yes.
And a lot of people have been sort of joking about the fact that the technology that's used on this thing is kind of janky, as they call it. The way that they drive the submarine is an old kind of knockoff video game controller.
I saw that.
Yeah. No, here's the thing. And I watched an expert's testimony this morning who is a submariner talking about that technology, and some people said, well, lots of submersibles now use this technology, video game controllers. But here's the thing, Hal, and I'm not trying to be hypercritical because I know people's lives are at stake here, but the technology that he's using is a wireless game controller. But it's not a good idea to have a wireless game controller when you're playing a video game that you are worried about maybe a signal interference. I mean, even when you're just using it just for its intended purpose, there are a lot of things that can go wrong with a wireless controller versus a wired controller. Batteries can die. Do you have a spare set of batteries on backup, right? If Bluetooth as a signal, goes down, or there's some interference with the Bluetooth signal, then that all of a sudden your controller is useless. Do they have a backup that they can do? There's a lot of unanswered questions in regards to what the submarine is capable of. But one thing in particular, Hal, and you probably haven't heard this yet, I'm going to play this little clip for you of the CEO talking about this submarine and the people that they hired to develop and create and operate this submarine, which I think you're going to find quite interesting. And that's why I titled this show today, The Little Woke Submarine. Take a listen to this, Hal.
Listen to what he talks about. The CEO talks about hiring people.
Oh, wait, I need to.
Yes, I mean, when I started business,
cut 23.
Yeah, hold on one second. Here we go. Take a listen to what the CEO is talking about, how they developed this technology.
Listen to what he talks about. The CEO talks about hiring people.
Yes, I mean, when I started the business, one of the things you'll find, there are other sub operators out there, but they typically have gentlemen who are ex-military submariners, and you'll see a whole bunch of 50-year-old white guys. I wanted our team to be younger, to be inspirational, and I'm not going to inspire a 16-year-old to go pursue marine technology, but a 25-year-old, who's a sub pilot or a platform operator or one of our techs can be inspirational. And so we've really tried to get very intelligent, motivated, younger individuals involved, because we're doing things that are completely new. We're taking approaches that are used largely in the aerospace industry, is related to safety and some of the preponderance of checklists, things we do for risk assessments and things like that are more aviation related than ocean related. And we can train people to do that. We can train someone to pilot the sub. We use a game controller, so anybody can drive the sub.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, Hal, but let's go through this one by one here for just a moment. One, he didn't want the people that they hired to work on this to be a bunch of 50-year-old white guys, Hal. So they didn't want guys that were in our vein who might be experienced working on these submarines. They wanted to hire a bunch of young, diverse post-college students to work on this submarine. You think that the diversity? Let me ask you something, Hal. When you get on an airplane, how would you feel if they said all of our pilots today have been chosen based on diversity, equity, and inclusion standards, and you will be happy to note that we chose our pilot tonight based on the fact that they are a black transgender woman of color. Your thoughts?
That scares me. It
Yeah.
really does. And I'm there. I'm one of the old white guys. And, every day, I see things where young guys, bright, ambitious, what he's talking about, do stupid things because they don't have the experience. And you keep saying to yourself every day, been there, done that, they're going to screw this up and they're going to pay dearly for it because they don't care what we have to say. We've gone through this. You talk about the comptroller. I'm a backup guy. They should have a hardwire system to back. All their operating systems should have some type of redundancy. Obviously, something happened to that submersible that was beyond whatever the controller can control it.
Mm-hmm.
So have they thought that out, with regard to, beside the air, how do we, because there's a lot of other functionary things going on with 5 human beings in a small submersible, that they have the lifestyle, that they have to have food, just interactions and stuff, bodily functions. All that has to be taken into consideration because they've been down for a while. And I'm not sure that what he said with regard to the young, ambitious people think about that type of stuff. Personally, that's bothersome to me that we have that type of mindset in our culture right now, that, like you said, the diversity and all that kind of stuff is more important than skill sets and knowledge and experience. And believe me, I talk to the old guys and we talk about things that go wrong that shouldn't have gone wrong because nobody mixes that experience in as compared to the young people. It's something like what we do today with regard to communications technology. You got to bring in that old engineer to put it back together again. I mean, we know quite a bit, but not quite enough. Oh yeah, I know what's wrong with that. And you can't replace experience.
One of the things that he mentions there too, which I think is worth analyzing, is he talks about how they take examples or they take inspiration from the aerospace industry. Well, here's what's interesting about that, because if they took inspiration from the aerospace industry, they're bolted into this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can't exit from the outside. Do you remember the story of Apollo 1?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what happened to those astronauts inside the Apollo capsule? They were bolted into the capsule. There was a fire inside of the Apollo 1 capsule. And because they weren't able to open it from the inside, they all died. So you would think if they were taking inspiration from the aerospace industry, that maybe they would have taken a few minutes and looked at the example of Apollo 1. Because here's the thing, Hal, even if the submarine makes it to the surface for whatever reason, if their life support systems, their buoys bring them up, they can't get out.
That's right.
And they only have enough air. It sounds like a really half-cocked cockamamie scheme to me, to be honest.
Not well thought out. The environment under and I'm a scuba diver, but that's neither here nor there. The environment under the sea is totally different than the environment at 50,000 feet. And they have to deal with different things. And you're absolutely right. And you deal with that pressure. You deal with the moving parts in the sea. If they can't be mobilized, the currents and everything else will take them where they want to take them. So I don't know. I agree with you. I don't think it is well thought out that it should have been.
Well, here's another headline that I thought was worthy of discussion too. They say the advisor to the Titanic submersible search says that the U.S. government is ignoring his calls, which would on its face sounds okay, sounds like a typical kind of government deal. But here's the other report that we heard, Hal, is that it took them 8 hours to report that the submarine was missing, the submersible was missing. And the possibility, they say, is I mean, there's a lot of finger pointing that's already starting to happen, but the possibility is that they do have periods where the submarine just comes out of contact because of the environment that they're operating in. They can't always be 24 hours a day in complete contact, right?
Right.
But you would think after maybe the first 3 or 4 hours that they would go ahead and start those rescue efforts. This has happened before, where the submarine got lost for a little while, Hal.
Mhm.
And from what I understood, this reporter yesterday who was on that expedition that was lost for a brief period before they came back, apparently the internet on the ship is Elon Musk's Starlink. And the ship, this is alleged, the ship allegedly turned the internet off the boat. The surface vessel that is there to operate with the crew of the submersible, they turned the internet off on the boat, allegedly, so that the reporters who were on the boat would not be able to report that the ship was missing. So there's a lot of shady stuff with this operation. And, some of the people who are critical of this are saying, oh, well, it doesn't have regulations. There's no standards. It's an exploratory technology. Well, that's true, right? You're just not going to be able to have government can't come up with regulations for a technology that doesn't exist yet, right? Explorers and entrepreneurs and people like that are going to have to go out there and create these kinds of things. And then once you create standards, at some point in time, there may be some regulatory body that might come into play, like there are on cruise ships and all those other kinds of things. Like I know libertarians aren't big on regulations, whatever. I'm not talking about the pros and cons of regulations, but there are definitely pros to having standards in regards to operation for these kinds of things. But can I just get your thoughts on how on the go ahead, what you're saying. I was going to ask about the
We're
emotions.
talking two different things.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're talking regulations, which is an enforceable instrument that requires compliance, and then you've got SOPs, standard operating procedure, and I'm sure that they've used all the knowledge that's been brought forth in submersibles on standard operating procedures to do that type of thing. The comment that you made with regard to the government, especially the Navy, which probably has the state-of-the-art technology to track submersibles and a submarine, the reluctance perceived that two things have happened. Number one, they should have immediately let somebody know in the federal government, especially the Navy, that there's a possibility of loss or the situation we've got now. And the second one is if there is some delay in the Navy responding, I would think something like this would be all hands on. That you would put every effort into it. I mean, you got 5 people down there, and you talk about the crew. Well, if you got the owner on there, and you probably got 3 people that paid to be on there. So
yeah,
you got
three paying passengers
and 1 crewman operating the controller and the owner of the company
and the CEO. Yeah.
So there's not a lot of expertise outside of the owner on that. He's probably got one of his young kids that know video games and a controller, and I don't know that for a fact. I mean, he's probably as knowledgeable as you can possibly be, but there's not a lot of like we've been talking about in this situation. Not a lot of knowledge down there on what to be able to do. The owner should know.
Let me give a brief little update for those who might just be tuning in.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. Thanks so much for watching the Wake Up America show. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you can join our show, which is every Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central. My guest right now is Hal Dooley. He's the former head of the Missouri Veterans Commission, a U.S. Marine, and a lobbyist here in the state of Missouri, as well as a talk show host himself. We're grateful to him for being on the show with us today. The latest news in the search for the missing submersible is that a Canadian airplane recently detected banging every 30 minutes in the area where the vessel lost radio contact with its surface ship. Details of the potential signs of life aboard the Ocean Gate submersible were included in internal emails sent to the Department of Homeland Security. The emails did not specify when the Canadian Maritime Surveillance and Patrol aircraft picked up on the banging. So as we understand what's going on, why is an aircraft, hearing banging underwater? They have these sonar buoys set up in the area where they are searching, and these sonar buoys then radio that information back to the airplanes they're searching in an area, they say, the size of Vermont. So we're talking about a very big area. And, if they're on the bottom of the ocean, it might make the search for them actually easier, Hal, because if they actually have enough power to at least be puttering around somewhere in the 0 to 15,000 feet range, it would be much harder to find them in that, what's the word I'm looking for here? That up and down in the vertical than it is if
right.
they're on the bottom. They could be stuck on the ship itself, right? We don't know,
Could very well be.
right?
There was some talk early on about the pinging capability,
Mm-hmm.
that they would be able to have the ability to send out electronic signals just like they do in other ships and those aircraft. Uh, I heard that early on too, but I don't know if they've got that and it's still active or whether it's passive anymore. But it's good to hear about the knocking,
Mm-hmm.
and if there's a possibility, if they could triangulate that and come down to an area, then they could probably do something with regard to identifying the area and what may or may not be wrong.
My brother Justin has been a Titanic freak ever since we were little kids. You know, the movies. You know, he had a model, a Titanic model when we were little kids. I mean, he's the Titanic musical. I mean, everything Titanic that has ever existed, my brother either knows about it or every Titanic fact there is. So I had him on yesterday. I call him a Titanic expert because, I mean, it's not like you get a degree in this kind of stuff. Right?
It's true.
So he's as much as an expert, I think, in anybody else might be, right? And he was talking yesterday about the ethics of the Titanic tourism. So when those reporters went down, and there's video of this, when those reporters went down and they were lost for a little while, they got stuck on the propeller. They were, in order to get away from the propeller, they had these currents that were pushing them into the propeller. In order to get away from them, they had to stir up the ocean bottom, right? And you can see all of this crud that they're stirring up while they're attached to the propeller trying to get off of this thing. And one of the things Justin brought up yesterday was the ethics of this kind of tourism. And I kind of tweeted about it yesterday where I kind of agreed with him. I think tourism is, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be allowed or that it should be illegal, but it should probably be heavily discouraged. Maybe the only people who should really be going down there are people who are scientific explorers. I think I read this morning that the person who found the Titanic in 1985 actually didn't want other people to go down there and visit it because, I mean, it's kind of like, going and treading on the graves at Normandy. You know what I mean? Like, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. What are your thoughts on the ethics of this kind of tourism?
I tend to agree with you with regard to diving on the Titanic just to see it. I mean, some of the news clips that I've seen say, well, we've got perfectly good pictures of every angle possible of the Titanic. You don't have to go down there and see it close up. And the other thing is, like you said, the sediment that's stirred up, and that's real fine material that could get into the system and create all kinds of mechanical problems with regard to a submersible, submarine, or any other type of submersible that could get close to the Titanic. And they could have some limits to get. I mean, you shouldn't be that close to it to begin with because of currents and things like that, because it's an entirely different atmosphere than we're used to. And the currents can be pretty vicious at times. And you've got cold foils and warm foils, and there's just a lot of that creates uncertainty with regard to driving an underground submersible or even a submarine. That's got to be taken into account. And that goes back to technology again. Do we have all the technology available to make this completely safe? And operational wise, the other side of it, like you said, should they be there? Number one, ethically, should they be there? And should they be that close? And should there be some type of relationship between the boat and tourism and like you said, research? Those things I think need to be explored. I'm certain they will be after this. That they'll look into it with regard to the safety factors of it, and it's a difficult situation, good situation to talk about, because I think some corrections need to be made with regard to that, because you don't want this to happen again, whatever it was. Obviously, something went wrong.
Yeah, I was watching a little mini documentary the other day about the area in Norway, or I can't remember where it was. It's in the Netherlands, perhaps, of where Captain Major Winters of 101st Airborne, Band of Brothers fame, where he and the 101st Airborne stayed. And there's a famous photograph of Winters, and apparently draws a lot of tourists to the area, and the tourists don't treat the area very well, and they kind of stomp all over everything. And so now they're having to, instead of just allowing people to come up and take photos, they're having to like charge access, to be able to get there, which, this is kind of that situation where it's $250,000. Not anybody can just go down there at this point in time. But I mean, mean, you know, having some kind of barrier to entry before people can just, you know, skirt around the Titanic and stir it up. You know, we're talking about a gravesite here, you know, might be something that, you know, it might be necessary. I wonder what you think about that one. Go ahead.
Well,
Finish.
what I'm thinking about those scuba diving days is since I started scuba diving in the mid 60s, there's a lot of marine parks anymore, especially along Australia and the coast of the United States, Guam, the Mariana Chain. We need to protect the reef because we don't take care of the environment the way we should. And we were killing our reefs because people were going down and walking on it and trying to take souvenirs and stuff like that. So we've created marine parks to prohibit that type of thing. And you can't touch it, you can't harvest it, you can't do anything. And I think what you were talking about a few minutes ago with regard to diving on the Titanic, I think that type of attitude and that type of regulation should be looked at hard.
There might need to be some kind of protection for the
Titanic or anything that has gone down, any other ship and things like that.
Yeah,
that they need to have some type of regulation on that, and I think they do with regard to old ships.
but yeah, what about like the USS Indianapolis? That's a good, you know, question right there, right? We're talking about the graves of soldiers. Joe Spinella over in the live stream just dropped us a super chat, which is essentially a digital tip. Gave us $10. Thank you, Joe. He said it's extremely hard to get a dive permit to see the Edmund Fitzgerald. It is classified a burial on Lake Superior, and that ship is only 560 feet deep. Boy, that's a great comment, and it came with $10. Joe, you're the man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
And
if you're just tuning in the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. We're grateful to have you here. Thank you very much for your support, Joe, and others who are watching the Wake Up America show with us on many of the platforms that we're streaming on. The latest news in the search for the missing submersible is that there have been noises detected in the hunt for the missing Titanic submersible. Search teams are scrambling to find the vessel. The latest news, unfortunately, though, is that they may not have any kind of technology to be able to bring that ship up. Even if they do find that missing crew, they don't necessarily have the technology, Hal, to be able to bring it up if they do find them. What could they do?
Well, it's tethered to the mothership. And of course, an interesting question, we talked about that earlier in the show, was where is the mothership right now relative to that? Even if they find a submersible, and it's in maybe 10,000 feet of water. How do you recover it? Knowing where it is, one thing. Getting the right equipment and maybe the mothership there to bring it up and open it up is a whole different thing. And you suggested how much? Less than a day's worth of air?
About a day, yeah.
About a day.
Time, right?
So you've got to factor in, we've got to get the right things there if they find it and they're still alive, up to the mothership or up to the surface to be able to recover it. So you've got that. And how long that would take is another variable in this that's very worrisome.
I'm looking at a Twitter account that claims to be Ocean Gate Expeditions. I haven't been able to verify the veracity of this account, that it is who they say they are. However, the account does appear to be legitimate and is reporting that the Titan submarine has 24 hours of oxygen left, and that is from 1 hour ago. So we're talking about a little bit less than a day now in regards to what's available. Now, Hal, you're not going to be able to see this, but the audience is going to be able to see this. I'm going to show a very brief little video, and then we're going to take a break about how the complexity of the search, about the complexity of this search based on how deep the water is. So I'm going to play this little video for you very briefly so you can kind of see just how deep, relatively deep, the Titanic is in regards to how deep the ocean is. So take a look at this little video comparison that we have right here, so you can see about how deep the Titanic is based on averages of lakes that are available. I'm going to have to mute this music, unfortunately, because we don't want to get a copyright strike on that one. But go ahead and watch this one. Here you can see there's the Statue of Liberty underneath the water at 93 meters. Right? They don't use feet overseas. So the Caspian Sea, there we go, down at 211 meters. Right, the USS George Washington, so a submarine, operates at a depth of about 210 meters, which is about, how tall the Eiffel Tower is. Right there, you can see Lake Superior goes down to about 406 meters. One of the biggest oil platforms, 565 meters down. Typhoon class submarines, their test depth, they can operate at about 400 meters. and twice of that is the size of the Burj Khalifa Tower of Dubai. That's 829 meters. You can see, and we still have not yet gotten to where the Titanic is or where this submarine may potentially be. Mediterranean Sea's average depth, 1,500 meters. Down the Norwegian Sea, 2,000 meters. That's the average there. In the Caribbean, the average depth, about 2,200 meters. Now, we still, again, have not touched the Titanic. 2,450 meters for the deepest oil well that's been dug there. And now the Atlantic Ocean's average depth, 3,646 meters. And we're still plunging down to the bottom where the Titanic is located. Again, we're only halfway to the depth of where the Titanic has gone. The Arctic Ocean, maximum depth, 5,600 meters. The USS Johnston, which is a shipwreck, that one's down 6,500 meters, and it continues on until we get down to about 12,000, I believe, is where the Titanic is. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. We're going to take a very brief little break, and when we get back, we'll continue our coverage of the search for the missing ship with Hal Dooley when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. It was 1946. A battle was fought, not overseas, but right here on American soil. The Battle of Athens, an intense struggle against election fraud and for the rights promised by our founding fathers. Driven by the Second Amendment, ordinary citizens stood tall and fought back. Help us expose this momentous battle of integrity and bravery. Your support can make a difference. Visit givesendgo.com/bleedamerican and pledge your support, because we believe in the power of truth, the strength of unity, and the spirit of we the people. Let us not forget, we bleed American.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
But they run out of their Cheetos by now.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson, and you're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show and Hal talking Cheetos. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. Hal Dooley is joining us live in studio. Hal, nice to see you here. Thanks for joining us on this show.
Good to be here.
Glad to have you. I should warn you before we're coming back to this show.
Think about it. I mean, yeah, how long were they expected to be down there and back?
So I think they said the entire trip can take between 8 and 10 hours.
Well, no, that sounds like that's Cheetos time, snack time.
They have a little bathroom, like kind of situation set up there too, because that's what I was thinking about. But apparently you still have to go in like a Ziploc bag. So it's not like high-tech bathroom, you don't have like a flushable toilet or anything like that.
Living conditions can't be all that great.
Yeah, I saw someone posting online who stated that they were in the U.S. Navy, they worked in a submarine. They said that the whole idea of submarine rescue is a joke. We all knew if we went down, we were not coming back. The USCG U.S. Coast Guard does not do sub-rescue. The Navy does, but not at 10,000 feet. Sub-rescue was just something we were told could be done, so politicians and parents would think it was safe. It's sad, but these folks are already dead. Hal, what do you know about this kind of stuff? From your time in the military. If submarine goes down, I remember this happened once before. It was the Kursk submarine that happened like back when I was in college, and it was just like, even if they were able to get to them and stuff like that, there just isn't the technology to be able to perform these kinds of rescues.
Not at that depth. That's the thing. You got recoverable depth, and then you got unrecoverable depth. And when you talk about anything beyond 600-700 feet for a submarine, I can't say it's unrecoverable depth, but he's right. The possibility of survival is slim and none, because nobody's got the capability of going that deep in a timely manner to recover the ship and bring it back and expose it to the environment again. It's just a bad situation. I won't say it's a bad situation. It's an unfortunate situation. Now, to get to that type of depth, that we don't have the technology to do anything. But then again, how many submersibles have we got running around at 10,000 feet?
Not many, right? I don't think U.S. submarines, we don't operate at that depth typically, right?
And researchers do. And they get government grants, and there's a lot of.
But they don't send manned submarines.
No, most of it's robotic submarines
stuff, right? And you were asking a little bit earlier about the people who were on board. That's kind of one of the big questions.
The 3 passengers.
Yeah, the missing Titanic explorers, right? Who are these people that are aboard the submersibles? The big name there that everybody is, talking about up front is this gentleman named Hamish Harding. He's kind of like this adventure explorer guy. He actually went and traveled on the Blue Origin rocket. So he was on the Jeff Bezos Amazon space rocket. And so he's kind of like, thrill seeker, adventurer, and a billionaire himself. And he lives in Dubai, and he is the chairman of Action Aviation. That's what they call it. It's an aircraft service company. And this Titanic mission was kind of like the latest in the list of big ticket bucket list items that he's kind of like been checking off of his list. He was also part of a crew that gained a Guinness World Record for the fastest circumnavigation of the Earth via the North and South Poles. In 2021, he went in a two-person submarine to the lowest point in the world's oceans, known as the Mariana Trench,
Right.
to the Pacific, to a depth of roughly 35,000 feet. So that underwater challenge earned him 2 Guinness World Records for the longest duration spent at full ocean depth and the longest distance traversed while there. So he must have been thinking, oh, well, the Titanic, I mean, this is
Piece of cake.
piece of cake. Yeah, I've already been to the deepest point on the earth, the Mariana Trench. So I didn't even know that we could go down to the Mariana Trench.
I didn't either. I
thought that was impossible, but apparently not. Flying the rocket, going to the deepest part of on the ocean, visiting the Titanic, but there it is. Paul Henry Nargeolet. He's in his 70s. He's kind of a leading authority on the Titanic. He's done more than 36 dives to the wreckage, right? And he's supervised the recovery of thousands of artifacts from the debris field around it. He's French. He spent 22 years in the French Navy, and he made it to the rank of commander. He joined the French Institute for Research and Exploitation of the Sea, and that's when he kind of developed his passion for the Titanic. So tourist expeditions are kind of like his thing. He's sort of a tour guide for things like this. So nobody knows the wreckage of the Titanic better than this guy, apparently. And he loved this. This was kind of his passion, showing tourists the wreckage. And he was one of the people who was on this submersible. Now, the tourists, Shahzada Dawood, he's a member of one of Pakistan's richest families, and he brought his son, unfortunately, Suleiman Dawood. Suleiman, apparently 19 years old, a university student in Scotland. He has a wife and a 17-year-old daughter as well. They are on a ship on the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. So they're actually
there.
They're there waiting for some sign of hope, which we did receive overnight, which is that there have been reports of banging that have been picked up by sonar buoys. And so I imagine that they're trying to rush to triangulate the location of that banging that they're hearing overseas. But, unfortunately, the thing is that under the ocean, sound travels. So banging underneath the ocean, it could be the submarine, but it could be a lot of other things as well, Hal. So Stockton Rush is another one of the travelers, OceanGate's founder and chief executive. So he's the guy who is responsible for all of this stuff. And he's a big adventure seeker, certified scuba diver. And at 19 years old, he became the world's youngest jet transport rated pilot. He flew around the world under a subcontract from Saudi Arabia Airlines. And he has been a flight test engineer. He's on the board of directors for several tech companies. And he founded OceanGate, this company that leads these tours, in 2009, saying that he wanted to expand deep sea exploration. He's also traveled to the Titanic shipwreck several times. He says that regulations in the submersible industry have slowed innovation. These are the kinds of unfortunate comments that the media is just getting to run with. He studied aerospace engineering as an undergrad at Princeton. And then in 1989, he obtained a master's degree in business from the University of California, Berkeley. So these are the people who are on board this ship. And the latest news that we have today, the one that's giving us cause for hope, is that searchers apparently have detected banging every 30 minutes near the area where the Titanic stuff vanished, as DHS emails, Department of Homeland Security's emails, have confirmed potential signs of life, Hal. It's a big story, and the whole world is just gripped by this story right now, Hal, which you can imagine. Justin, my brother, yesterday when he came on to talk about this, talked about like the reason why so many people are compelled by the story of the Titanic. The big one is because whenever accidents happen, like an airplane accident, right? It's over in a moment. Like you don't really have any time to sort of contemplate.
Right.
But the reason the Titanic is so compelling in people, and this is a macabre sort of, explanation, but those passengers had time to think about their demise. An hour and a half or so is what it took, 90 minutes for that boat to go down. And now the people in this submersible sort of face a similar fate, but with a longer timeline to consider their own mortality. I mean, can you imagine how?
Thinking about that? I don't like to think about something like that, but you mentioned the Titanic. Can you imagine the families and had to make that decision and who hits the life lifeboats and who doesn't stay behind.
Mm.
Tremendous decision they have to make that you got to make.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I guess there's been books written about that, but I'd hate to be in that situation,
Mm.
where you've got a husband and wife and 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And
One of some Buddy Mansour, I think he's kind of making a joke here. He says we should bury Gettysburg, in regards to like our discussion about whether or not it should be kind of closed off to tourists,
Mhm.
the Titanic. Anybody can visit Gettysburg. I mean, I don't know that it's really a good comparison because there's no danger involved in Gettysburg. But I can tell you this, that if you go to Gettysburg and you get stuck being an idiot, you get stuck on monuments and you start like doing things that are defacing the monuments there. First of all, you might actually find people who are going to beat the ever living piss out of
Mhm.
you. And second of all, the park rangers are probably going to kick you out. And the reason why I say this and bring this up is because tourists who have visited the Titanic before have gotten stuck on the boat. Right? We mentioned this earlier, but for those who are just tuning in, there's video, and I'm not able to pull it up for some reason at some point, but there is video of these people not following proper protocol, getting too close to the boat and getting stuck on the propeller. And we're talking again about a gravesite here. We're not just talking about like, just walking across grass where people died. We're talking about like a specific location where people suffered and died. And I think there needs to be some level of respect for that. Hal, don't you agree?
I should think there'd be a lot of level of respect, and we've talked about that. Researchers, I think, should be allowed to research it, gather artifacts and things like that. But what we're talking about in this instance with this submersible and those people, you got to think it's got to be thrill seeking. And I know the early accounts, they said, people that want to get up close like that are a lot different than you can see every angle of the Titanic, photographs, detailed photographs, inside and outside so far, so that you wouldn't have to necessarily go down there to see it in person.
Right.
So you got to think the mentality of these people are rich people who seek the thrill. It's not necessarily the respect, as you said, of the memorial or the gravesite of a lot of people and respecting that. And going back to what I talked about with regard to scuba diving days on the reefs, you should respect the reef for what it is, and it's a living organism. And people don't care. They're going to tear chunks out. They're going to walk on it. They're going to destroy stuff. They leave debris behind. It's sad that we would allow that to happen. So I'm like you. I'm hoping out of this they would rethink some regulatory restrictions on getting up close and personal on the Titanic itself.
I'm trying to find the video of the reporter who got stuck on there, but it's not coming up for me right now. Yeah, but for those who might be tuning in right now, I did find video of the reporter from his expedition here, where he's talking about the waiver that they had to sign before they get on this boat. Take a listen to this.
Service. An experimental submersible vessel that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death. Where do I sign? Oh, take your shoes off. That's customary. Okay. Wow.
Inside, the sub has about as much room as a minivan.
So this is not your grandfather's submersible. We only have one button. That's it. It should be like an elevator. It shouldn't take a lot of skill.
The Titan is the only 5-person sub in the world that can reach Titanic depths, 2.4 miles below the sea. It's also the only one with a toilet, sort of. And yet, I couldn't help noticing how many pieces of this sub seemed improvised.
We can use these off-the-shelf components.
I got these from Camper World. We run the whole thing with this game controller.
Come on! It seems like
They thought they were being a little bit flippant there, and I tell you what, the ocean does not forgive.
It does not.
It does not forgive.
Does not.
It's there's not a lot of room for error down there, and I mean, I almost feel as if the ocean will not be mocked, and it almost felt like he was kind of mocking with his talk about like this low technology solution. I think I found the interview where they talked about the reporter who got stuck with the video here. Take a listen to this.
He is one of the few people on planet Earth who knows what the 5 men on the Titanic submersible are going through.
All those feelings that I had when I was trapped at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean is just coming back, and it's not pleasant.
Physicist Dr. Michael Guillen was the first TV journalist to report from the wreckage of the Titanic when he was science editor at ABC News in the year 2000.
Oh my gosh, look at the size of that thing.
But disaster struck. The submersible suddenly got caught in a strong current and got sucked into one of the Titanic's 21-ton propellers.
Look at the blade, it's still clean, like it's brand new.
But when they tried to back out,
the next thing I know is there's a collision.
Oh boy, I felt a little bit of a boom, didn't you? Yeah.
And huge pieces, rusted pieces of the Titanic start falling down on us.
So see, this is what, and you can't see it how, but like the audience can see these big pieces, these chunks of the Titanic are coming off, right? And he's there as a reporter. I mean, this is just extremely disrespectful. And I mean, like, this is the kind of thing I don't really think should be tolerated, to be quite honest.
Well, like we talked about, I think they need to revisit the regulations and restrictions be placed on the Titanic in the future with regard to how close and who, not necessarily who, but how close you can do and what you can do when you're in the vicinity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying that like the governments of the world need to come together under the United Nations and force these kinds of things. What I'm saying is, I mean, we have things like, we have not regulatory standards, but not all regulatory standards are mandatory. Like universal serial bus, the USB cables that we use to plug everything in right there is a result of an industry coming together and saying, hey, let's make a standard of communication here, right? There probably needs to be something like this so that idiot reporters and tourists aren't going and getting stuck on a gravesite and destroying. Because I think, listen, people who are kind of like taking this very flippantly and being like, yeah, it's freedom, you should be able to do whatever you want, all this kind of stuff. I don't think anybody would think that if your parents had a memorial or a tomb, that anybody should be able to walk up and deface the memorial to your parents.
No, you should.
Okay? I don't really think that anybody would say that you should be allowed to do something like that. So the question is how do we preserve these kinds of historic items that allow people to be able to see it and to enjoy it, which we should want to do, but that prevent people from, in visiting it, destroying it? That really is a big question, Hal.
It is. And of course, the Titanic's in international waters, so I don't know what that oversight would be, but it is something that needs to be looked at.
It is. We've got a lot more to go today on the show. Judge Napolitano is going to be joining us here in a little bit less than 10 minutes, Hal. We're going to talk to him about the Hunter Biden case a little bit and about how the government is sort of getting around the Fourth Amendment in gathering personal information on American citizens. The government has found a novel new way to gather information, private information about private citizens that doesn't involve the government itself spying on us. It's going to be an interesting discussion when we get back with Judge Napolitano. Time for us to take a little pee break, and we'll be back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Thank you for watching the Wake Up America show with my dad. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 reasons why you should visit Dad's online store at apforlibertyshop.com. Number 1, you can get exclusive freedom-loving merch designed by AP himself or me mom, Steffi. Liberty Laura has made some designs as well, and blimey, they are great. Number 2, most of these products are so wicked that they aren't even allowed to be advertised on Facebook or Instagram. Modern machine guns and a proper keychain. Plus, our Grover Cleveland t-shirt is so spicy apparently that leftists on Facebook specifically banned it from appearing on the website. Number 3, you're supporting liberty lovers just like you. Spend your money where you earn it, and you help me pups build a community that supports what you believe. Bloody hell, this commercial is running too long. Gotta run. Bye now. Don't forget to visit apforlibertyshop.com. That's apforlibertyshop.com.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Well, we've been talking about the ins and outs of the potential rescue of the submersible that went missing in the ocean while on a tour of the wreckage of the Titanic. But some people were asking the question about how does maritime law come into play? Well, he's not a maritime law expert. He's an expert on the U.S. Constitution. He's joining us right now. Judge Andrew Napolitano on the program, and Hal Dooley, of course, staying with us on set. Good morning, Judge. How are you today, sir?
Good morning. Good morning, Austin. A pleasure to be with you. And Hal, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Judge.
Judge, we're so grateful to have you here so that we can get your legal analysis of this situation that is unfolding in this drama that is gripping the world right now, the missing crew of a submersible that was on a tourism trip to the Titanic. People were asking the question about, is there any kind of an obligation for a rescue to be carried out? And if so, which country has the priority in conducting such a search? And you had an interesting take on this.
Well, so maritime law in international waters is based on treaties to which the United States is a signatory. And under the Constitution, treaties have very, very high priority. A treaty is treated in the same category as the Constitution itself. These particular treaties about international waters are essentially benign, and they really regulate what happens if there's an accident or what happens if there's a theft in terms of liability. However, for something like this, there's no obligation on the part of any government to search for these people when the cause of their demise is a consequence of their own doing. Now, not everybody's doing in there, but certainly the CEO of the company, who is responsible for the safety and backup features of this device, bears responsibility, even though he himself is apparently one of the people trapped on it. So when you see Canadian, French, German, American assets there, that's a humanitarian, not a legal obligation.
People who are down there in that submarine, Judge, are billionaires. The people who are tourists, at least two of them are billionaires. Would the expectation be in a society that, ruled by libertarian principles, that if we were to expend resources and try conducting this kind of a rescue, that there would have to be some kind of a reparation or a recompensation provided by the people who are being rescued?
Well, I mean, in a true libertarian society, the billionaires would have had insurance, and the insurance would have paid for the rescue and would have had a rescue team at hand, which probably would consist of former Navy divers and would be a little bit more aggressive than the rescue teams that are there. I'm sure that there is some insurance, but it's probably for the demise of these people as opposed to their rescue. They probably didn't anticipate this. You can tell that from the type of vehicle that is above them on the surface and out of which they and their submersible came. Let's say they're saved, and let's say the US government spent $10 million to save them. Can the government recoup that 10 million from them? Probably not, because the government chose on its own to go out there.
That's fascinating stuff. If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, I'm your host, Austin Peterson. I'm joined on set and in studio with our friend Hal Dooley, who's a local Jeffersonian, just like myself, as well. And joining us from the state of New Jersey is a Jeffersonian in another manner, philosophically Jeffersonian, Judge Napolitano, the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which you can download and subscribe on any of your mobile devices. The link to his YouTube channel was just dropped down in the chat by our friend and moderator, Cheeky Mayor. So make sure that you follow and subscribe to Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom podcast, which he's going to give us a sneak preview of here in just a moment. But I'd like it, Judge, if you'd give us a sneak preview of your weekly column at judgenap.com. This week, you're talking about how the government is going around the Fourth Amendment in order to gather information on private citizens. It's quite sneaky and insidious. Would you like to share this with us?
No warrant, no problem. So the Director of National Intelligence, who nominally supervises the government's 16 known admitted spying agencies, revealed to Congress that when they can't get a search warrant to surveil somebody, meaning they don't have probable cause of crime on the person, they have been buying the data that they want to obtain by surveillance by using taxpayer dollars and going to, I'm just going to throw names out there. I don't know if these entities are involved. General Motors. We need to know everywhere Judge Napolitano's GMC truck has been driven in the past 48 hours. So we need you to access the computer chip that you installed in that truck when you manufactured it, and we'll pay you for it. Verizon, we need to know where his cell phone has been. Chase Manhattan, we need to know what kind of money he's spending out of his checkbook. None of this could be obtained legally by the government unless it got a search warrant. And in order to get a search warrant, it has to demonstrate probable cause of crime. Well, the government isn't looking for crime. The government is just looking for whatever it can about all the people it can. And it's not targeting me or you. It's a fishing expedition. It's what's called a general warrant, expressly prohibited by the Fourth Amendment. So the government is doing indirectly by buying data from entities with which we unwittingly store the data, what it cannot do directly. Can it get away with that under the Constitution? Absolutely not. If the government could do indirectly what the Constitution prohibits it from doing directly, then the constitutional prohibitions, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, as a classic example, then those Constitution prohibitions would mean nothing. We already know they mean nothing. We already know that in the 2020 presidential campaign, the government used Twitter to suppress speech favorable to Donald Trump and to suppress speech unfavorable to Joe Biden. That is the government putting its finger on the speech scale on the basis of speech content. It can't do it directly. It can't do it indirectly. But they keep getting away with it until some court stops them.
Judge, how would this apply to something like private prison, for example? Would that be a similar situation where the government is outsourcing its responsibility?
Yes, but the Eighth Amendment would still apply, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. So the people that run the private prison would have the restraints that the Bill of Rights imposes on the government imposed on them because of their symbiotic relationship with the government. They're relieving the government of the burden of housing prisoners and receiving cash from the government. That's what could very well have happened to Twitter. Now, Twitter's not the same Twitter as 2020 because of Elon Musk bought it. But if someone really wanted to, they could probably get liability imposed on new Twitter for what old Twitter did by employing the doctrine of state action. When a private actor, the operator of Twitter, the owner of Twitter, the operator of a private prison, and the government engage in a mutually beneficial commercial enterprise, the courts will impose the restraints that the Constitution imposes on the government on the private actor. So someone would have to sue and say the Fourth Amendment applies to, and again, I'm just making up names. I don't know if these people are involved. General Motors, Verizon, Chase Manhattan, Dr. Fill in the blank, who has your medical records, wherever the feds went to buy data that they can't legally acquire on their own.
Judge, some libertarians have a problem with private prisons because they believe that it creates a financial incentive for incarceration. Do you agree with that?
You know, I don't know enough about the numbers, and most private prison experiments have not worked out well. They are not necessarily cleaner, healthier, or more humane environments. The Supreme Court, because there's really no political pressure on them whatsoever, has not really done anything about prisoners' rights and the conditions of prisons. Bastiat once said, you can tell how much liberty there is in a country by how they treat their prisoners. Well, we have more prisoners per capita than any country in the world, and half of them are there for victimless crimes.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. I'm glad to have Hal Dooley joining me in studio on set with me today. And I'm also joined now live by the good Judge Andrew Napolitano from New Jersey. He is the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which you can download on any of your mobile devices, and subscribe to his YouTube channel at the links that our friend Cheeky Mayor is dropping over there in the chat. Thank you, Cheeky Mayor, by the way, for doing that for us so that people can subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. We appreciate that. Judge, I'd love to get your take on the Hunter Biden case there, the plea deal. Surprised, unsurprised? Your thoughts on this?
I'm not surprised. It's a very light resolution for him, a very happy one for him. I mean, normally, if you fail to report that much income, remember the tax is 1.4, not the income. So the income is huge. If the tax on it is 1.4 million. you're going to be punished more severely than just 2 years of probation and a guilty plea to a misdemeanor. So 2 misdemeanors of failing to pay taxes. The gun charge is a very interesting one. You and I think, have talked about this. So the gun charge is actually a perjury charge, because when he bought his gun in Delaware, he certified under oath that he was not a habitual user of drugs. He then published an autobiography in which he said he was a habitual user of drugs. So the feds decided to go after him for lying to them when he sought his permit to own a gun in Delaware. Now, here's the interesting part. If this were challenged, the standard today is that the states must employ the same standards that they employed when the Second Amendment was ratified, in an era where the framers and the founders themselves regularly consumed hemp and didn't even give it a second thought about the regularity with which they consumed it and their ability to protect themselves. So is that statute constitutional or not? Well, we'll have to wait for another challenge, since it's obviously not going to be challenged now. This is not a guilty plea for perjury. This is what's called a pretrial intervention, meaning a 2-year period of probation. If he doesn't commit a crime and isn't caught with any drugs in his system, then the gun charge, the perjury charge, is dismissed as if it had never even been filed. So the Republicans are up in arms because this is really a superb deal from the perspective of the defendant. Prosecutor is a Donald Trump appointee whom Joe Biden took a chance on leaving in office in Delaware. And he ended up negotiating a deal for old Joe's son that's about as good as you can get.
You think there's any corruption involved, Judge?
It would just be speculation. I really don't know. It is an extraordinarily light sentence. I mean, if his name were Hunter Jones instead of Hunter Biden, we wouldn't even be talking about this.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm your host, Austin Peterson. I'm speaking to Judge Andrew Napolitano right now. We've been discussing a wide range of issues. If you like what the judge is saying, make sure you click that like button on whichever channel you're watching us on and subscribe to the judge's show, Judging Freedom, which has become an absolute runaway hit. Millions of people have tuned in to hear the judge's legal analysis from a libertarian perspective on his show Judging Freedom, which has centered primarily around the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Many of the guests that have come on are wizened experts on that issue, Judge, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that you've had what are almost 1 billion views, I think I counted the other day, of the Judging Freedom podcast. So congratulations, number one. And number two, would you mind giving us a sneak preview of what you've got coming up next on your hit show?
Yes, I'd be happy to. At 11 o'clock today Eastern, Tony Shaffer, former military intelligence. Here's what I'm going to ask him. Does the CIA spy on Joe and Jill Biden in the White House? My other intel guys, have, as much as I love them, have not wanted to answer that. And then at 3:30, one of my, as we say in the business, tent poles, one of the most popular of my weekly guests, 3:30 Eastern, Scott Ritter, on doesn't the Biden administration finally recognize that Ukraine is going to lose this war? And if so, why are we still sending billions of dollars in equipment to them?
I think I saw yesterday the news was that there was some accounting error in their favor, like a monopoly bank card, essentially. Oh, we actually had an extra $6 billion sitting around that we forgot to give to them. I want to take a look at that. Judge, your weekly column is available at judgenap.com. Your show, Judging Freedom, is an enormous hit, and congratulations to you on that. And thank you for being so generous with your time with us on the Wake Up America show every Wednesday mornings, Judge. Thank you
It's
for
a
your time.
pleasure, Austin. It's the highlight of my week, every week. God love you.
Thank you, Judge. Have a wonderful day. What do you think of Judge Andrew Napolitano? Send us a text at 573-319-1037. 1586. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We are monitoring your text messages. If you send us a text at 573-319-1586, then you may have it read on air. We'd love to hear from you about that one. Very briefly, though, before we get back to, I want to talk about that coverage of the Titanic, Hal. We're going to get to in just a moment. Hal, do you invest in gold or silver at all? Are you a precious metals guy? Have you ever...
I'm starting to.
Okay.
I'm starting to.
Okay, because I'll tell you, my company that I work with, Lear Capital, has got this deal going on that if you buy an ounce of gold, you get an ounce of silver free.
That's a good deal.
It's a good deal.
Very good deal.
So if you've been thinking to yourself, hey, I've been, watching Austin's advertisements, and sometimes I tune them out, and now I've got your attention, today's the day to call my friends at Lear Capital, 1-800-885-2175, because it's a limited time offer, and you want to lock this in if you'd like to make a purchase of gold and get some free silver with it. Now is the time to call 1-800-885-2175. Call them today. Tell them you heard on the Wake Up America show that they've got a deal going on that you get a free ounce of silver when you buy an ounce of gold. So write this number down, 1-800-885-2175, or visit learaustin.com. They'll send you a free gold and silver information kit, but I recommend that you call them because you want to get that deal locked in. It's better to talk to somebody on the phone, let them know that you heard about this deal, and get that hookup, because ounce of gold you were going to buy anyway, get a free ounce of silver, something else to sock away so that you can protect your portfolio from the wild swings of the marketplace. We've seen a lot of these bank closures this year. Certainly there's a lot of instability out there, and I'm sick and tired of watching 1K and all my portfolio just taking a nosedive. I'd like to have some security, because who knows? You know what's going to happen if Joe Biden gets reelected next year. I know, don't say it. I know. Don't freak out just yet, and you won't have to freak out if you have the kind of financial security that comes from having a portion. I know, stop screaming. Okay, relax, calm down, people. Yes, it could happen, and if so, you want to secure yourself with gold and silver. So call them today, 1-800-885-2175. That's 885-2175. Memorize it, put it in your phone, call them today, get your gold and silver squared away. All right. Back to the news reporting. Hal, I know you were thinking about just talking about gold for just a second there. You were asking them for the phone number the other day.
And Legal do this, and it's very good, is buying gold.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can buy gold bars, you can buy gold bullion, you can buy new gold coins, you can buy old gold coins, and the information they send you is very good at telling you what would be the best investment vehicle, because gold just isn't gold. Like I said, it comes in different forms and stuff. And you get certificates. You don't necessarily have to deal with the actual gold itself. You get the gold certificates, and they hold the gold for you.
Yeah.
It's the same. But they're in the business to help you make the right decisions on your investment.
Yeah, Stephanie and I want to buy the tax advantage gold, where you get it in your 401k or your Roth IRA.
And that's a very good vehicle.
And that way, you can, buy it, and you can actually sell it back to Lear Capital as well. So they'll buy your gold back as well. So if you're like, oh, who's going to buy my gold? And you want to take it to the pawn shop.
Right. It's a big service. I mean, you don't think about that. I mean, you think about buying it and investing it, but once you want to capitalize on that investment, that they would be more than happy to buy it back at market price.
Yep. So visit our friends over at Lear Capital today. All right. So Hal, we've got about 10 more minutes until we've got another guest who's going to join us today to talk about this conflict that's going on online between vaccine scientists and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Have you been following Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
I've been following him. It's interesting how he is running his campaign, who he's talking to, and what he's saying. So, I'm looking forward to that.
Do you like how he's kind of giving hell to Joe Biden a little bit?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's been exciting to see. And a lot of people that I know that are kind of libertarians have been big fans of his and have been jumping on board his campaign because he's speaking out against COVID tyranny. But here's the thing. There's a lot of crackpot stuff that he said in the past, right? Talking about locking up people like me and you because we're climate change deniers and stuff, because he's an environmental lawyer, and let's not forget he's a Democrat, so he doesn't say a lot of nice things about guns quite frequently. But then I stumbled across this clip yesterday where he's talking about the gay lifestyle. Yeah, take a listen to this.
Tony Fauci won a power struggle with Broder. And he said, this is an infectious disease. We've proven it. With Bob Gallo proved this is being caused by a virus. There's a lot of people that said it's not a virus. The virus is a passenger virus. And these people are dying mainly because of poppers. 100% of the people who died in the first, of the first 1,000 who had AIDS were people who were addicted to poppers, which are known to cause Kaposi sarcoma in rats. And you know, they were people who were part of a gay lifestyle where they were burning the candle at both ends, and they were taking a lot of injectable drugs and methadone, and there were poppers on sale everywhere at the gay bars on the day. I remember growing up.
So when he's talking about poppers there, he's talking about pills. So he's talking about,
you're going to have to explain this to me after he's done.
It's hard to understand him because he's got some kind of a vocal cord injury. And he's talking about sarcomas that were incurred by the gay community in taking these pills.
In the gay bars, they would be last call for poppers and last call for alcohol at 2 a.m. And all the gay bath houses sold poppers, and it became a ubiquitous. And there were a number of people in the agency who said, this is not a viral disease, but it's a disease that is environmental. And it's being caused to people who are, you know, who are getting autoimmunity from doing these, from toxics. But for Tony Fauci, it was really important to call it a virus because that made it an infectious disease. And it became, and it allowed him.
So he's kind of engaging in a little bit of AIDS denialism here in the sense, like saying, I don't know. I mean, not a lot of Democrats really love RFK. Most of RFK's support is coming from outside of the Democratic Party these days. I know that's not going to be a very popular take, right? But I mean, he's attributing AIDS not to HIV, not to a virus, but to the gay lifestyle and recreational drugs. So, you know, I'm trying to be as generous as possible with his words right there, and he is a little bit difficult to understand there. But I mean, he's not a big fan of infectious disease science and stuff. I mean, he's a environmental lawyer, not really a scientist and things like that. But this is kind of the debate and the discussion that we're going to be having here, because he said a lot of really harebrained stuff over the years. Hal. Anyways, what you want to weigh in? Yeah.
Number one, I have a very difficult time understanding him.
Yes.
Irrespective of the speech impediment. It's just he uses words and soliloquies that I can't follow.
Yes.
Environmental virus. What is an environmental? Just hanging around and you just happen to catch it. I mean, I don't understand that.
So he suggested that AIDS being attributed to HIV is part of a conspiracy. You probably remember the 80s. Remember when there was like a big like conspiracy theory that like AIDS was like created in a government lab and like sewed among black people in the gay community and all this kind of stuff? Poppers are not pills, says Joe D. Please let me know. I'd love to hear what poppers are. I remember the poppers episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Somebody says it's video head cleaner. Oh, that's what that is. Okay.
Poppers are?
Poppers? I always thought poppers were pills, like you popped a pill, right?
Video head cleaner? Is that what it is?
Yeah. So apparently it's some kind of like, so it's not a popper, it's a huffer. That's what I would call
huffer.
That. Like, so you remember huffing glue and huffing paint and all that kind of stuff?
The glue sniffers, amazing people, amazing people.
Glue sniffers, good God! Oh my God! Oh, it's just a wild episode here. So we've got 5 more minutes. We're gonna go get our buddy. Ian Howarth to talk about this a little bit. We're going to ask him about RFK. We're going to ask him about this vaccine scientist, Dr. Hotez, who's been harassed, he claims, by people who are attacking him over his pro-vaccine stance. We're still not done fighting this vaccine fight, pal. I know you thought it was over. We spent 3 years on KWOS radio talking about that shit.
Yes, we did.
We couldn't say shit because that was the radio, but we can say it here on the Wake Up America show at wakeupamerica.show.com.
Good morning to the Cantina crew. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
If I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors, what would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist. Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We're still joined in studio by local Light of Freedom. What do we call him? What do we call Hal Dooley? Hal, what title do you prefer?
An old guy.
An old white guy.
An old white guy.
The kind of old white guy that they didn't want working on that submersible out there because they wanted a little bit of diversity.
Got more tags hanging on my name than anybody.
and on your skin.
That's right, on my skin. I want to be half and half.
Joining us now live to talk about free speech, suppression, censorship, and vaccines online. And hopefully this discussion won't get us censored online, but it just might, is Ian Howarth. He is a British Jewish guy in Nashville, Tennessee. He's also a columnist of the DC Examiner and the New York Post. Joining us right now. Good morning, Ian. Nice to see you today.
Morning. Nice to see you as always.
So this conversation started, Ian, because of a battle that is brewed online between Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as well as this vaccine scientist by the name of Dr. Peter Hotez. Do you want to kind of catch us up on what's going on with this and why it's such a big deal?
Yeah, so I think the high-level summary of this is that Dr. Hotez has been one of the faces of the generally pro-vaccine movement. And I want to be a bit more specific because there's a massive difference between being generally pro-vaccine. He was very, very pro the COVID vaccine. So he was one of the propagandists for the left. He would go on CNN, MSNBC, TMZ, all these highbrow journalistic places, really pushing whatever the narrative was that they wanted right now. So that kids should mask, you must get the vaccine, kids should get the vaccine, etc. And then you've got RFK Jr., who's obviously growing in notoriety right now, really trying to present himself as the anti position to that generally. He went on Joe Rogan's show, obviously the biggest podcast in the world, spoke about a lot of stuff to do with vaccines. Dr. Hotez came out and said it was vaccine misinformation, disinformation, the usual labels. And then Joe Rogan invited Dr. Hotez back onto the show to debate with RFK Jr., offered a bunch of money to charity if he did so. In more words than a few, Dr. Hotez basically said no. And then this giant division in our online society erupted where either one side thought the idea of them debating was absolutely horrendous insults, spit in the eye to science, and the other side saw it as Dr. Hotez running away with the tail between his legs, indicating that RFK Jr. is right about everything. And so I think we're going to dig into this a bit more, I'm sure, but it definitely, I would say, a symptom of where our social media has gone in recent years.
Well, what has been disgusting and horrifying to me is that people are attaching a view of science and medicine to partisan interests, right? And I mean, I identify far more from a tribal perspective with the Joe Rogans and the Elon Musks of the world. But in regards to, vaccine science, I definitely do not agree with most of what I hear from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. However, during the pandemic, and Hal probably remembers this back because we did a lot of risk reporting and coverage together during the pandemic on the radio, is that if you were someone like me, Ian, and someone who was generally pro-vaccine but was against mandatory vaccinations, I was labeled an anti-vaxxer. We were anti-vaxxers. As a matter of fact, Hal, I think specifically you and I had that conversation.
Yes, we did many times.
That it didn't matter that we were pro-vaccine if we were not for the mandate. If you're not for mandating and jabbing people, against their will, we were anti-vaxxers, which basically means I might as well just be RFK at this point. The left is just driving us into the arms of, no offense, crackpots.
Well, also RFK Jr. is capitalizing on especially on the conservative right. I think there are a lot of independents, libertarians who feel this way. I think there are a lot of conservatives who have been so starved of someone saying basic truths, and especially in the mainstream media. Joe Rogan, in many ways, is the mainstream media now. He's part of it. Again, biggest podcast in the world, massive platform. And so I think you have people like this who come in and capitalize on saying 99 crazy things, one correct thing. Everyone hyper focuses on the correct thing and say, oh, see, he must be right. But of course, like RFK Jr. is wrong on a lot of things. I think he's abhorrent on a lot of things. But on the subject of COVID-19, he's obviously correct in many ways. Like the fact that the vaccine didn't work, it was pushed upon people, forced upon people. People were promised things, and then the definition was changed later. Absolutely horrendous. And then you get a lot of people who are tired of being, as you said, labeled anti-vaxxer. And so I think people just get tired and just say, well, screw you then. I'll just go side with this guy. And I think for me, what I find concerning as one of these people who, again, was the label pro-vaccine. I'm pro certain vaccines, depending on the disease, depending on the efficacy. That's what science actually means, is we break it down by vaccine, by risk factor, all of those things. The COVID-19 vaccine isn't really a vaccine. It quickly deteriorated into it'll help you get less sick, but we can't actually prove that because each case is irrefutable, and you can't have both individuals have COVID with and without the vaccine and then actually compare them. It's impossible to do. But when you're talking about something like smallpox, polio, I actually think the vaccine is quite important. The analogy I always use is, it's like saying you're anti-drug, so you want to ban Tylenol and meth at the same time. Like different drugs, different diseases, different purposes. Let's have specific conversations.
Well, we
but people don't want to have that.
Conversations, Ian. That's the problem, is that people like Professor Peter Hotez will go out on MSNBC all day long and will take these puff piece interviews, but they won't actually stand up to scrutiny and answer legitimate scientific questions about any of these issues here. So, I mean, no wonder people are like, well, you know what? This makes me more suspicious. I mean, Richard Dawkins used to all the time answer questions from Christians about evolutionary science and biology, and he would be quite vicious in his debates, but he at least stood up for what he believed in. We don't see that anymore. There are no Richard Dawkins anymore who will actually stand up for what they believe in science and submit to debates. What are they afraid of?
Well, I think the problem is that there are these people. It's just they're not given the platform, because the mainstream media doesn't want to give someone who's actually going to give a contrarian answer or an answer that doesn't align with their narrative. They like people like Dr. Hotez, who just throws on a bow tie, throws on a lab coat, and can be the face of science. That's why they love Fauci. Fauci changed his mind every 3 seconds, depending on what was needed. But he was the face of the science for them. And so I don't think it's about necessarily these people not existing. I think the problem is a lot of these people necessarily don't want to be in the media. They'd rather be actually doing their job. And also a lot of these people want to have actual deeper discussions. And there's just not a lot of space for that right now. CNN, MSNBC, they don't want people talking for 2, 3, 4 hours like they do on Joe Rogan show. They want very quick, snappy 5-minute things of, if you're an anti-vaxxer, you're killing grandma. That's what they want. And so you're going to get so-called scientists who are willing to do that. And real scientists who care about real science won't debase themselves to that. And so you're almost choosing from a very, very small pool of people who are doing the opposite of what we want.
That's a really good analysis. If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking to Ian Howarth. He is a writer at the DC Examiner and New York Post. He's joining us right now, as well as Hal Dooley, who's on set with us today. Hal, what are your thoughts on this, Hal? I mean, we don't have real debates about this.
Well, old Hal, he got the COVID shot. He got 3 boosters. He only wore a mask when he absolutely had to, was all over the place, talked to all kinds of people, got in their face, violated the 6-foot rule, and never got COVID. Now, what the hell happened to me? What happened to me?
So wait a minute. So you got all vaxxed, triple boosted.
Oh yeah, I did all of it.
But you did get COVID?
No, I did not get COVID.
Well, see, there you go. So it must have worked, right? See, I've had situations where.
So I was going to ask Ian, did it work, or is it just?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. So the best science that I've been able to determine, based on like the most up to date information, is that it might provide some protection for some people if they are immunocompromised. But for everyone else, you might as well, get COVID-19. However, on the opposite side of that, on the pro-vax side of things, is also this information that if you do get COVID-19 versus getting the vaccination, that the risk of myocarditis is actually higher if you contract COVID than if you get the vaccine, which the vaccine could cause myocarditis, but it happens more frequently with people who had COVID-19. That's at least my latest understanding of things. But, nobody says that on the mainstream media, Ian. You got to pick one side or the other.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is the binary problem of our entire culture right now. You cannot have nuanced positions. No one actually understands that 2 things can be true at once. No one understands that most of, especially medical science, is a balance of risk versus reward. Literally every single treatment comes with some risk. Like if you read the instruction manual on any pill you take, it comes with risks. That's just the reality of what you're doing. You're taking, say, a pill or a treatment, trying to alleviate one problem, and the risks of the negative outcomes are usually lower than the rewards of taking that treatment. No one wants to talk about that with COVID. They just wanted to label it as this magic from God solution to our problem, that if you just take it, nothing will go wrong. Don't look over there where there are tons of athletes dropping dead on the field. Like, just don't look over there. Don't have that discussion. Yeah,
they lied.
They just lied to your face.
Yeah, they lied. And they can't admit that they lied because they feel like it would diminish their credibility. But I mean, go ahead, Hal. Go ahead.
Well, and I agree with Ian. My problem now is, now that we've gone through it, we can identify. I'm an old guy, and from what I understand scientifically, with respiratory problems, I'm more susceptible to it. than a young person was. But politically, they made no distinction between a high-risk respiratory person and a young, healthy person that had a great immune system. We used them all politically as pundits that we got a mask, we've got to do this, you got to get the COVID shot. And trying to separate out, and I think we're trying to do a good job now between the politics of it and the science of it. And if we can sort those two out, maybe in the future we can do a little bit better job and people can be exposed for all this political rhetoric and using us as puppets.
So a lot of people reported adverse effects of the vaccine, but I had the opposite situation. So once I got vaccinated, I actually grew an inch taller and my dick got bigger.
Yeah, don't go there. Don't go there.
Austin works for Pfizer, by the way. Disclosure.
No, we're not on talk radio. Talk radio anymore.
Well, it went from 2 inches to 3 inches. All right, I appreciate that. Appreciate that. Now Stephanie's happy. All right.
Just kidding. Just kidding. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. Sometimes we do get a little PG-13 here on the program. Thank you for tuning in and sticking around with us after we say things like that. If you're just tuning in right now and you're wondering who that handsome face is on the screen, it's not me. No, it's that other guy over there. Ian Howarth is joining us. He's a writer at the New York Post and a columnist at DC Examiner as well. You can follow him online on Twitter at IG Howarth, which is Haworth. Looks like Hayworth, pronounced Howarth, like how on earth, but without the on. Ian, any potential resolution to any of this? I mean, this Peter Hotez guy is reporting that people are showing up to his house and harassing him. And you know that obviously we don't want things like that to happen. You know, if somebody, I don't care what your political opinions are, I don't care if I'm wrong as the day is long, if you show up to my house, you know, screaming at me, you know, you're going to have a laser dot in the middle of your forehead. So I mean, you know, bad situation all around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, harassing someone online is one thing. Harassing someone in person at their home is not really acceptable, and also helps him with his victim claim. Like, since a lot of this blew up, he immediately moved to, I'm a hero, but I'm also a victim. Joe Rogan is bullying me to try and get me to come onto his, you know, the biggest podcast in the world, that kind of stuff. And so when you have people violently or aggressively turning up at his home, it really helps him hide behind that. And so I think a lot of us, if we actually want these debates to happen, or at least have discussions about this, I don't necessarily think Hotez and RFK Jr. are the people who should be having that debate. But if we want debate to happen, then we need to be trying to actually elevate the people we want to be speaking of this, rather than just being aggressive in our silos and allowing both sides to claim victim. It doesn't get us anywhere.
Now, who do you like and who do you listen to, Ian? When who do you turn to for things like this?
I think a lot of people who are involved in the Great Barrington Declaration, for example, are fantastic. The problem I have is that often we don't choose the people who are actually going to say what we want to hear. That's my biggest problem with really any part of American life right now. And that's where I place a lot of blame on the foot of politicians, Trump, and a lot of state leaders, is the fact that they didn't seek out people with opposing views, whether I like them or not, and then come up with a policy position that measured all of these things. What they did is they gave all the authority to someone else, be it Fauci or some other leader, and then hid behind them as an authority figure. That's where I'm angry. You know, scientists can debate left, right, and center. It doesn't really matter. Science is never settled. It's always a position of what information do we have now? How can we make decisions based on that? But scientific decisions are only one part of the puzzle. We've also got to think about economics. We've got to think about mental health. We've got to think about societal norms, think about education. And our leaders failed on that level. And so it's one thing to talk about the debate itself, but I also think we need to return to the role of politicians in this, which is to make these measured decisions rather than just, oh, something's going wrong. I don't want to tell people that people might die from this and it's nothing we can really do. So let's just shove Fauci out there and give him the keys to the car. I think that's the biggest failure I've seen.
Ian, you're a terrific interview, and we're so grateful that you're generous with your time to join us in the morning. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go today?
Yeah, I think just try and seek out information and try your best to almost argue with yourself. That's something I do all the time. It's so easy, especially on something like Twitter, to assume you're right and seek out the people who will confirm that. I think it's better for all of us if we just try and question yourself, try and be critical. I think it's best for all of us.
Yeah, I agree. Ian Howarth, follow him over on Twitter at IGHAWORTH. Ian Howarth, like how on earth is he so talented and well-spoken? Ian, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate you very much, and hopefully we'll have you on again real soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. All right. What do you think of Ian Howarth? Send us a text at 573-319-1586. Again, you can text the show today at 573-319-1586. Our next subject before we end the show today, which we're almost at the very end, I'm excited to talk about this one. A new study came out that said attractive women. Now, Hal's already going, his already ears are perking up. Attractive women were more likely to be, quote, right wing, while, quote, left-wing women showed more contempt, according to this new study. Now, we're going to talk about that in just a moment, but Hal, before we do it, real quick, I got to ask you a question. You want to get high?
I'm already high.
My friend Hal Dooley has never tried Delta 8 gummies from our friends over at shellshockcbd.com. This Delta bar, I feel like I might share with our buddy over there. You've never tried THC or anything like that, Hal? I know you never enjoyed a delicious edible or anything like
Delta bar.
Explain to me about all of these aches and pains that
Alpha
you have.
bar, Delta bar.
Yeah, these aches and pains that you have, and all the suffering. And I'll tell you what, if you're looking for a way to for a great painkiller, Hal, why don't you just take one of those chocolate bars right there?
Delta bar.
Yeah, my buddy
from Shell Shock too. I like that.
Shell Shock CBD, yes. My buddy John Burke over at shellshockcbd.com has got a great deal going on right now on Delta 8 bars. There are 8 states where it's not legal, so you have to check with your state. But in Missouri, we got some sweet recreational here in Missouri, don't we, Hal?
Yes, we do.
So you can purchase Shell Shock CBD if you're a Missouri resident, and most of the states in the United States you can buy Delta 8. It is psychoactive if you use the Delta 8, FYI. But if you're looking for something that's not psychoactive, or if you're looking for some gummies that are just going to be pain relievers that don't involve you feeling like you're down in a yellow submarine, then you can visit shellshockcbd.com for their CBD oils. Yep, there's also tinctures, which Hal is grabbing right now.
Bomb drops.
Bomb drops.
Tell me about bomb drops.
Well, this is a tincture, and you take this and you put this underneath your tongue, and it tastes like this is a cherry vanilla flavor, but they also have I think bomb pop flavored, right? So you can get it's like a citrus flavor as well at shellshockcbd.com. This is a tincture. You put a little bit underneath your tongue so you can control your dosage. Now, I'll tell you how, since you're not like an expert or anything like this, one of these Delta bars right here is like 100 milligrams or something like that. Like this one is actually 12 servings, 500 milligrams. One chocolate square on this is 40 milligrams. I'll tell you this, 5 milligrams for me is like, okay, I'm going to have a good time. This is going to be a party.
So if you eat a Delta bar and I eat a Delta bar, we could have a great 3-hour scenario.
Oh, it's going to be a lot longer than 3 hours if we ate an entire
That's
Delta
all you'll allow me on. And then the roll on.
Now, this is non-psychoactive, right? So this is actually just for pain relief. Have you ever used like those freeze roll-ons and stuff like that? This is really good for your pain. It's called Roll On, Roll Out, Shell Shock CBD. The CBD freeze roll-on says penetrates even the heaviest of armor. I threw my back out a couple of weeks ago in karate because I'm just not a young man anymore. And I couldn't even sit up straight. And I used this stuff, and it definitely helped dull the pain.
So what about us old guys in arthritis?
Arthritis?
It's starting to get in my shoulder now a little bit.
So,
put that on that.
Yep. So yes, and you should try the CBD freeze roll on.
Okay.
They also have really good gummies that are delicious. They have some that are CBD, which is non-psychoactive. And then they have some that are Delta 8, which is like, I'll tell you how, if you ate a Delta 8 gummy, like a 10 milligram gummy, you'd be locked into your couch for like 6-7 hours, and you'd want to eat.
Is that what it is? When I got back from Vietnam about 1968.
Yeah, you'd want to eat.
And I went up to Hyde-Ashbury, and they offered me some gummies. I should have taken them. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm surprised that they made gummies back then. Edibles wasn't really the thing, but nowadays. It used to be that my buddy would like make these brownies and stuff like that, and you'd just be like, conked out for like a few hours while you lay on the beach. But nowadays you can control your dosage, and you can get great quality stuff, and it's legal. Whether or not it's moral or ethical is up to you, but it always worked for me. Visit shellshockcbd.com. Use my code AP4Liberty. 1, because you're going to save 10%, which is good for you. And 2, because it helps support the Wake Up America show. Because, surprise, surprise, It takes many hours to produce every single show, and it's very expensive to produce the Wake Up America show. So it helps to make our sponsors glad that they invest in us. Visit shellshockcbd.com. Use that code AP for Liberty. AP, the number 4, AP for Liberty. Okay, we got 10 minutes left to go. Hal, all right. Attractive women were more likely to be right-wing, while left-wing women showed more contempt, according to a study published by Scientific Reports. Attractive women more likely to be right-wing, while women whose faces displayed contempt were more likely to be left-wing. Before I get into the actual science of this, Hal, what's your take just based on the headline?
I've noticed that. Well, and I won't be critical, but I noticed that.
Yes.
You know, when I look at left-leaning broadcasts, so as far as contributors are concerned, I'm always amazed at the severe hairdos. You know.
Yes.
And like you said, stern-looking and just. I think it's a good observation. I think it's a valid operation. Not that that all right-winger women are sweeties and good-looking and bathing beauties and stuff like that. But I think there's a more calmer demeanor in right-leaning women than left-leaning women. They get pretty intense on the left, very intense.
You stupid little son of a bitch! I mean, you misogynist, homophobic little pig!
See, you got to act doing that.
Yeah.
See, that doesn't come natural to you.
No, because I'm not left wing, so it doesn't come naturally for me to behave like that. But according to a scientific study, which is for some reason not loading on my screen right now, they did this study with thousands of women. Physiognomy is what they call this. The practice of deciphering a person's personality based on appearance dates back to 500 BC. So, of course, the question is it pseudoscience or is there any credibility to it? But this study is published by Scientific Reports may support the theory that physiognomy may actually be legit after all. They did this research in Denmark, which a lot of attractive people there. They utilized machine learning techniques on thousands of faces to predict their political ideology. So they wanted to tell by their faces, could you tell if someone is left-wing or right-wing based on their face and their facial expressions? Surprisingly, the predictions were successful 61% of the time. So their colleagues, they used a data set of 5,230 pictures, and then they used politicians so that you could analyze what their political viewpoints were. And then they excluded candidates who were of non-European origin because they were 2.5 times more likely to be representative of left-wing parties. So, and then they removed photos of politicians with beards because apparently beards can sort of impair the analyses for whatever reason. So here's what they found. The sample was divided by both genders. The algorithm applied to them separately. They found that masculinity and attractiveness weren't linked to ideology in men, but happy faces, both men and women, were likely to be representatives of right-wing parties. So people who had happier faces in general were more likely to be right-wing. Politicians who had a neutral expression or who showed contempt were more likely to represent left-wing ideologies. Okay? Interesting.
Well, now I give you my observation.
Let's see
Is
it.
that your observation too? Just a casual observation, unscientific. Would you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, think about it. Like, the left is centered around outrage, right, and contempt for not just the people around you, but life itself, right? We're talking about like anti-natalists, people who think that if you think that humans are a cancer and causing global warming, right, then you're probably in general going to be unhappy with life, right? If you're pro-life and you see babies as a good thing and humanity is a good thing and you're aspirational, I would say that would probably lend itself to be a much more positive. You're going to have a happier life. Right? Here's the thing, Hal, I'm a libertarian, right? So on some things I have what might be considered to be a liberal view. On other things I might be considered to have a more right-wing view, right? But so what that means is that I have spent time, and as somebody who majored in musical theater and who works in the arts, I'm typically surrounded by people who are lefties in that environment, right? If you do a show, if you do a play, if you do a movie, talk radio is conservative, so that's different. but you're surrounded by lefties. Like when I was at Fox News, the producers, right? Even Bill O'Reilly's producers were like Democrats and lefties and stuff. You just can't avoid it because you're in New York, and people who are creative and talented, creative people are going to be more lefties, and they're miserable. They're so miserable how they hate everything and everyone, and they're constantly
And are connivers.
Connivers, sure, absolutely. And you get conservatives and right wingers who are connivers too. But in the time that I spend in my personal life around conservatives and my conservative family and conservative friends,
You married an attractive woman,
but she's a libertarian, and
did you know that before you even spoke to her? Did her looks draw you to her, saying she might be a libertarian or right leaning? See, I'm sitting here thinking of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, so Stephanie is she is a unicorn. Okay, so she is.
Wait a minute. What's a unicorn?
A unicorn is a magical creature that doesn't exist, right?
Okay.
So she is like rare.
She does exist,
but she's rare as hen's teeth, as they might say. The old boys might say. And
you writing all this down, Steph?
Here's the thing: she is not a conservative, and she is not a liberal, right? She's like me. And which is to say that you believe that you ought to be able to have economic freedom, like a Republican might believe, some of them, and then you have social freedoms, like the left, some leftists might believe, right?
Okay.
Like in some social freedoms. So that's what composes libertarianism to some degree. And I'm bastardizing it. That's not really, we're something completely separate from conservatives and liberals.
So you wouldn't fit what we're talking about with regard.
No, but I think here's the thing. I generally.
What would you see when you see
lean
Stephanie?
right.
Do you see right, left, or
No,
the unicorn?
Well, I see the unicorn
Okay.
because she's a redhead and she is beautiful.
So I'm married to a unicorn.
But she's hyper intelligent, right? Yeah, you are as well. Because the thing is that libertarian women, again, are not like conservative women. Also have like a very angry streak to them, right? And a very what you might say, sort of like. I mean, would you want to be married? Sarah Palin's a lovely lady, but would you want to be married to a Sarah Palin? You know what I mean? Like,
No.
the girl bossing you around from the right and all that kind of stuff like that. And would you want to be married to a psychotic, AOC, right? And stuff like that. I mean, these are beautiful women, right? Now, a lot of men would do it just because they'd simp for a beautiful woman and all that kind of stuff. But like, I have standards, right? So like, beauty is only skin deep, as we understand. But there's a substance to libertarian women that far outweighs what you get from a conservative or a liberal woman.
See, I look at AOC as a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
I look at Hillary Clinton as definitely leftist, evil looking, mean looking.
Yeah, you know what's funny about Hillary Clinton is that like back in the day, she was actually kind of a dish when she was in like college.
Way back in the day.
The earth, yeah.
That's right.
You can kind of see it. There's like a couple of pictures
when she was in about the 5th to 6th grade.
I think it was when
she maxed out.
She was playing volleyball, I think, and there's a photo of her like playing volleyball where she's actually got some nice legs. And I remember like once being like, oh, okay, I could see why Bill would be, because Bill Clinton, like he's gonna be. He's going to be fine.
I was looking for stature.
He was looking for something beautiful. It's 9 a.m. Hal, we're supposed to let him go at this point. It's been fun.
Oh, well, let's do this again.
We should do it again. I appreciate you joining me.
That's fun.
Before I go really briefly, can I do a quick one quick little plug?
Sure.
Right. So I've got a documentary that I'm producing at the end of next month called The Battle of Athens. Oh, it's called Bleed American, about the Battle of Athens. Have you ever heard this story? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go to this festival that's a commemoration for the event.
Okay.
I'm going to interview some of the locals, people who were related to those who were involved in the battle. But I need to raise about 10 grand to produce this documentary. And that's why I'm asking our listeners for financial support to visit givesendgo.com/Bleed American. So givesendgo/Bleed American. If you would do me the favor and make a generous donation today to help me tell this story about election fraud, political violence, and veterans' victory. World War II veterans returning from overseas after fighting for democracy found that they had lost it here at home. So when the local political machine counted ballots in secret, the veterans were having no part of it. They laid siege to the jail where the ballots were being held, dynamited it open, and the sheriffs, the corrupt deputies, all surrendered. The veterans found out that they had actually won the election. Help me to tell that story, to bring it to a wider audience. Make a generous donation today. We have raised almost $2,000 so far to our goal. We're trying to get to $10,000 by the end of next month. I'm already speaking to directors of photography and local people on the ground who are going to help me produce this, but it's going to get expensive quick. Please chip in $50, $100. One of our friends donated $1,000. Thank you, Andy. Today at givesendgo.com/bleedamerican, and we will help us spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. Hal, let's do it again soon.
Would love to do that, Austin. Thank you.
Yep, we will do it again real soon. Thanks so much for tuning into the show, and we will see you tomorrow on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupamericashow.com.
Good morning to the Cantina Group. Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter, and I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America Show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new
It was 1946. A battle was fought, not overseas, but right here on American soil. The Battle of Athens, an intense struggle against election fraud and for the rights promised by our founding fathers. Driven by the Second Amendment, ordinary citizens stood tall and fought back. Help us expose this momentous battle of integrity and bravery. Your support can make a difference. Visit givesendgo.com/bleedamerican and pledge your support, because we believe in the power of truth, the strength of unity, and the spirit of we the people. Let us not forget, we bleed American.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit aporlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is
better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.